Over the years, numerous women have come to me with the same comment, the same kind of complaint, and it's always this. How can I get my husband to be the spiritual leader? He never wants to lead this family. And I say, well, let me ask you a question. Do you obey him? Most of them are like, well, he doesn't go to church. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do anything that he's supposed to do with our family. And I recently said this comment to a young lady, and it resonated with both of us, was, let him lead you, and then you can lead him to Christ. So I'm 58 years old. I grew up in the same world you did, and I will tell you, the idea of letting my husband lead me was something that made me want to vomit. And actually, I was like, oh, heck no. I'm not going to let him lead me. He's a jerk. He doesn't know what he's doing. All he cares about is himself, blah, blah, blah. So I revolted against God's command to let my husband lead me. And another thing, too, is I was willing to let him lead me. And I hear this from a lot of strong women, too. It's like, well, in order for him to lead me, do I have to get weaker? Because he's a weak man. So I have to get weaker so he can be the head and he can be stronger than me. I felt the same way for many, many years until I started realizing, no, we do not have to make ourselves weaker. My husband married a strong woman for a reason. We have to do our part also in lifting them up to be stronger, to know that they can lead us, because it's very intimidating for men to see the strong woman gets up, does this, makes six figures, she's does her own thing, very successful in her own right, and then to say, woman, as my husband and I joke, woman, you're going to do this. What we have to do is be able to say, first of all, this is in several stages, but the first ones are elevating our husbands and saying, you can do this, or you've been really good at that, or finding ways where we can elevate them emotionally. Because trust me, being a man is tough. And think about it. If you were a man in 2023, how hard would it be when we've got this diabolical feminist movement overrunning our nation and world, where men don't even know what they're supposed to say, allowed to say, and they've just kind of gone, whatever. Many men have thrown their hands up. So that's got to be tough to know, if I do lead my wife, is she going to yell at me? Is she going to say, don't you tell me what to do? So the first thing we have to do is let our husbands know that we give them back the power to lead us. We have to do that by telling them what they're good at, what they're strong at. And yeah, I know there's someone listening right now that's kind of like, ugh, I don't want to tell my husband anything. But the second part is, even if you're unable to do that, is God says he needs to reorder the family. He needs to put us back in our hierarchical order. When we were told by Our Lady of Fatima back in 1917 that the final battle would be for marriage and the family, it wasn't just a family, it was marriage. And what is the best thing Satan can do is he can flip it upside down. So again, all of us have fallen for it. We're all like, the idea right now that I'm telling you, that to go back to obeying your husband is extremely uncomfortable. And I'm sure I'll get some comments about how old-fashioned it is, whatever. I don't care if it's old-fashioned. I want it God-fashioned. I want to do what he wants. Father Chad Ripperger and all the other exorcists are saying that Satan is a hierarchy. They have an order within their own satanic system, but even according to God, they cannot, for instance, possess you. They have to have power or permission. They very much are in line with authority and obedience. So we too are, but one of Satan's tricks was by telling us that we weren't. You don't need to tell no man, tell you what to do. You do what you want. He doesn't know better than you. As a matter of fact, you've got a PhD. What has he got? He just graduated high school or whatever. Wasn't talking about me because my husband has a master's degree. But Satan will tell us things. And of course, this is 2023. You do it yourself. You don't need a man. Or, further yet, people not marrying. You don't need a man because he'll tell you what to do. If you have your own money, you have your own house, you have your own everything, you can do your own way. Yeah, because that leaves us women without a head. We don't have a man in our household. and he is there to provide and protect. And so, yeah, we might be able to provide for ourselves, but we're not wired that way. We're wired to care for family, and most of you watching really do enjoy your time staying home with your kids. So if we don't marry, we don't have someone there to provide and to protect us. So this thing about letting him lead, we have to first start with that before I get to the second half. Because I was just reading yet another book. I was reading about Our Lady of Akita when she was talking to Sister Agnes Sasagawa in Japan. And this was an approved apparition. And she said to Sister, as she was getting ready to take her orders, you are about to take 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. And the most important one is obedience. Obey your superiors. Padre Pio was held from his priestly duties for a decade. And he knew the men that were silencing him were bad men. And he knew the reasons were not noble. But you know what he did? He bowed down to them and he obeyed them. Because he knew that God knew what God was doing. He knew that God knew that good would come out of it. He didn't know what it was. But he knew that his biggest responsibility was to be obedient to his superiors. And God had it all mapped out. God knew what he was doing. Mary is the mother of God. She could have thrown that in Joseph's face. Who are you? You're a sinner. I don't have any sin. Of course, that would have been a sin. But truly, she let him, and he is imperfect. And she let him lead her. And there are probably times where she knew better. So this idea of once we start learning to obey. There are things your husband's going to ask you to do that you don't like. And I think of this, I talk to a lot of women when it comes to the physical intimacy. I'll say that because when I use the 3-letter word that begins with S, they sometimes censor me. So physical intimacy. He wants me to do this and he wants me to do that. And he wants me to do things that are not accepted by God. And I say, yeah, you cannot do those things that are not accepted by God sexually with your husband. You cannot ever sin. That's what happened in Nazi Germany, right? Their superiors told them what to do. It's like, hey, I did what my superiors told me, and they did wrong. So unless it's a sin, if your husband asks you to do it and tells you that you need to do it, if you respect his obedience and you are on your knees, God, I do not want to do this. This does not seem right. I want to do things my way. I just know he's not hearing this piece of information. But you obey. If your husband says, no, I don't want you to go there. No, I don't want you to hang out with that person. No, I don't want you to do such and such. Sometimes he'll say, yes. Yes, I want you to do this. Yes, I want you to do that. Sometimes he'll tell you to take a job when you know it's best to stay home with the kids. But we are talking about the huge power of obedience. And I'm not going to get into the details of like some of the small examples, though. You can post your comments and then I'll try to respond to them and do videos about them. Sometimes just a video answer is even better. But here's the point of this video. You let your man lead you. And he's like, wow, she's doing it. First of all, don't forget that your prayers are helping. God, give him wisdom. God, give him wisdom. Let my husband know the best way to lead me. God is working on your husband. Your prayers are having God work on your husband so that he'll be a better leader. But then this is the most important part. That's how you lead him to Christ. Because some of you are like, my husband's not a godly man. He doesn't go to church. He's telling me not to go to church. You can't obey that because that's a sin. You have to go to church. My husband's telling me I have to go to this Novus Ordo, not a Latin Mass. Then go to the Novus Ordo because that's not a sin. Or go to the Latin one if he's telling you to do that because that's not a sin. When you show your husband, I am putting myself back in God's order. I'm being obedient to you, no matter the pain it causes me, no matter the persecution I get from other women who are like, how do you listen to him? No matter the persecution or looks you get from your family, no matter the difficulty it is for you in your flesh, When you are obedient to your husband, when you let him lead you, you are prime to lead him to Christ. Because he's seen your God-like, Christ-like example. That should not be lost on you. Satan thinks he's winning when he tells us, don't you obey any man. But God knows more. That is, again, I've made that comment about my big fat Greek wedding, and my favorite line, the man is the head, but the woman is the neck. When you let your husband lead you, you are a good neck. You're leading him back to Christ because he sees the holiness. And remember, to be holy means to be set apart. When you shine the light of Christ through you, which is, obedience is one of the hugest in putting the family authority back in line. Your light shines so brightly, you become extremely attractive. When you're letting him lead you, in the obedience, he wants to have physical intimacy and you don't, but you do. It is not lost on him. He sees Christ whether you think he does or not, because it is Christ. And it's shining. And Christ is the most attractive force on earth because Christ is love, and love is the most attractive force on earth. And you're leading him there. Don't you think if you obey him in things that are not spiritual, but you don't like him, that he may be more likely when you say, honey, would you like to go to Mass with me? Honey, would you like to pray with me? And he says no, and you're like, okay. But she agreed. She obeyed. Meditate on this. I'm a woman myself, and I know how hard this is. I'm living in the same world you're living in. I'm a alpha female. But once I started putting my own authority structure in my marriage back into its rightful place, it has transformed my marriage. And guess what? I haven't stopped having to be a strong woman. It's just that my husband is not threatened by that. And I get to lift him up, and he supports me in so many other ways. And guess what? He never used to be Catholic. And now he's a Catholic, godly man who leads us in the rosary, who goes to Mass, goes to daily Mass when he can. Let your man lead, and then you lead him to Christ. Ponder on that. And love to read the comments on this one. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching another informational Bacon Bit. And I'd, as always, want to remind you to live your life sunny side up.